Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to Old News with Dan and Carrie. Dan is off today and will be back in our next episode. Our guest today is Sarah Carlson. Sarah and I worked at WKOW TV in Madison, Wisconsin. Our time there overlapped in 2000 and 2001. Before landing her role as anchor and reporter in Madison, Sarah worked in TV markets in Alexandria, Minnesota, and La Crosse, Wisconsin. Sarah's life took a dramatic turn in 2008 after a benign tumor led to epilepsy. Sarah suffered 2 seizures live on TV, which led to her leaving the TV news business altogether. Here to tell us more about what happened then and share how she is helping others with epilepsy is Sarah Carlson. Hi, Sarah, and welcome to Old News.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you for having me. What a story, right?
It's an incredible story, and you've really been through the ringer and had a difficult journey, but now you've come out the other side and are doing incredible works. Can we start present day and just find out how you are? Are you still having seizures? And, give us a health update.
Perfect. I've had epilepsy 15 years, and even when it's controlled medically, it's still something you have. But I've only had controlled seizures about 3.5.
So what does that mean, controlled seizures?
That means, I'm sorry, the medication's controlling them. So I have epilepsy. But without those meds, I would still be having seizures. But it took 12 or so years to find it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long, long journey. So you were accurate in what you said about the brain tumor and seizures weren't ending. And it got so bad that it wasn't the TV station saying, get out, you stink. But it was more so my doctor saying, this is so stressful. Live TV is probably one of the reasons that it's happening because of the stress. So that was tough, but I am in great health today. I've continued to be lucky with the medication that I'm on. It was a newer medication, so I seriously tried 12 or 13, I think, before, or more. I lost count, and I try not to think about those days because it was so horrible. And now I'm on a medication that really works. And just prior to that, the seizures worsened to the point where I wasn't able to drive.
Oh,
and this was pre-COVID, where we didn't just get to have a job remote. So I went on disability 5 years, from 2017 until a couple of years ago, just about. So I am in my current job at Sketchworks Architecture, which is in Middleton, Wisconsin here. I'm a business development manager, so I certainly don't know architecture, but this is my first job in 5 years.
Wow.
I left news and really struggled to find the next thing because of my health. So I went from just kind of settling because of my epilepsy and wanting to make a living to finally taking that break I needed, getting better, and now I can have a real job, and feel like I can do my job.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about exactly what you do, but I kind of want to rewind a little bit now and talk about, what led to that first seizure. So you had a benign brain tumor. Were you aware that you had a brain tumor, or was that just news to you when you had a seizure?
That was news, and it took 2 years. So I always explain it that in 2008, the tumor started causing seizures. But when we did scans, it didn't show up. So we didn't know I had a slow growing tumor until 2010, almost 2 years. They got it out right away.
Why wasn't it showing up? Was it hidden by something, or do they know why they couldn't see it?
Well, it was really hard to see. They showed me on the MRI, and I kind of went, wow, how'd you see it the second time? And because it was slow growing. So it was there in 2008 and causing the problems. But 2 years later, when we continued, luckily, another MRI, and we've done several different scans. There it was. And I was lucky, very, very lucky. A super rare, benign, but rare tumor. But I was lucky that it was very close to my skull. in my left
Oh.
temporal lobe. We could talk brain, but I'm really lucky to be alive. People with brain tumors, had that been much deeper, I probably wouldn't have been able to get the whole thing out. And
Mm.
it is the kind that had legs. So they had to try to really get around that thing to make
Oh
sure.
boy.
Yeah. And lots of scans after with the family and loved ones holding our breath. So
Oh
it
my
was, yeah.
goodness.
And doctors, I'll never forget, they said in 2010, if you don't have any more seizures after 10 years, throw a big party. So
Mm.
that was 2020 during COVID. So we had a small party.
You had a
But
Zoom
either way,
party.
believe
Yeah.
me, yeah, I mean, I didn't need a party. I've been just,
Mm.
sounds so corny, but I do feel lucky to be alive a lot.
Wow. So
Yeah.
they had to slice open your skull to get
Not
at this.
really. I mean, you'd
Not
be
really?
surprised. Yeah, they did. They sliced in here, but
Yeah.
it was a small slice. They didn't even, everyone thought they would cut my hair. They didn't cut
Yeah.
my hair.
Really?
They told me later that I had a higher risk of infection if they did. I had all this hair
Mm.
still. So
Hmm.
they, I mean, I have a scar if you dig in here, but I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
even show it to you. A little bit comes down by my ear.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I recovered pretty quickly. So that
Really?
was in 2010. And by 2012, I was, wanting to get back into news. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Right after the surgery, I did get back into news.
Mm.
That's when I realized this, where there was a tumor, there
Mm-hmm.
is now scar tissue. So the brain
Oh.
doesn't know the difference, only that I'm going to live because it's not a tumor that's going to
Mm-hmm.
grow and,
Mm-hmm.
do damage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the seizures continued. And that's again, yeah,
Oh.
it's hard to understand, and it was hard for me to do, but it was doctor's orders. And he actually said to me, if you don't stop, I can't treat you because this is too much,
Oh,
I didn't want to be
wow.
responsible for me hurting myself.
So I know you worked at all three stations, big stations in Madison, except
Yeah.
Fox. Did you ever work for Fox too?
No, but you know how the Fox affiliate is
Yeah.
always with one of the other three. So,
Yes.
but I don't think I ever went on Fox, so I can't
Okay.
can't
So
do that one.
were you at WKOW when your first seizure happened, or were you at one of the
No,
other stations?
no, I went from the WKOW. I did mornings and then evenings, and then I left for about 3 years, and I worked for SSM Healthcare actually in PR.
Mm.
And then I got lured back in,
Hmm.
and I was over at NBC 15 in the morning, and that's when it started happening in
Oh.
2008. It was
Oh.
in the summer of 2008 and took 6 months to diagnose because
Oh,
all that
really?
happened was, I always describe it in person as, I would feel like I needed to hold on to the desk, but I
Hmm.
could still read a teleprompter. My
Hmm.
first seizures were so mild that I just felt funny. I kid
Hmm.
you not, like you would when you feel a little nauseous or something. Um, so they tested me for everything but epilepsy,
Oh.
until about the fall of '08.
Yeah, because a lot of us think of, epileptic seizure, we think of on the floor, shaking,
Correct.
unconscious, but
Yeah.
that's not what happens to you, right?
Oh, no. And there are about 36 different kinds of seizures, believe it or not. The
Wow.
one you're describing, we see in the movies or in a
Mhm.
TV show in a hospital
Right.
where,
Or even like first aid training, or,
yeah,
when I have to do that because I teach yoga, it's like that's
yeah,
what you see in the video. It's falling, shaking, make sure they don't hurt themselves, but let them ride it out. But we don't
yeah.
really see the kind you have.
And the kind you're describing, they're the most dangerous. And that's why
Mm.
seizure first aid training is so important. It's something that
Hmm.
admire that you have. I'm glad you have it. More teachers and first aid people should know it.
Hmm.
I had a few over the course of my years, usually in
Oh.
between medications, because
Oh, really?
my brain rather, and body were not
Yeah.
doing well.
Yeah.
Those are scary. But I have partial complex seizures. I always have to stop because it started with partial simple, which
Hmm.
I literally could just feel funny, read a teleprompter, drive a car, function, and not know what was going on. Just felt off. And then
Hmm.
they got worse and they turned into complex partial. Partial meaning was in my temporal lobe, one part of my brain.
Hmm.
And complex meant I lost consciousness. So suddenly,
Oh.
yeah, that's when, and it happened a couple of years after surgery. Yeah,
Oh.
I started losing consciousness. So I would have told you before this, I might have stopped talking and just made a funny face.
Hmm.
Or if I were walking or running, which I'm a big runner, I would stop. I didn't fall. Interestingly, sometimes I would decide to sit, or if I were talking to you now, I would slump.
Hmm.
And then it only lasted about 15, 30 seconds. And a couple minutes later, I would it would take that long for me to come to. And then I'd be confused 5 or 10 minutes of where's Emma, the name of my dog, or where's Madeline and Ethan, my kids, not knowing that I should know where they are. And I'd be confused about what day it is and where I am. Those were the most horrible moments. And I would have, in the last several years, I had every couple of weeks, I would have clusters of those. So we never figured out what triggered them for me. Good sleep and lack of stress is good, but I would have super stressful moments and it didn't cause one. Or really, sleep well that week and have one. But I would have clusters, and that's why I was on disability too. I would sleep during the day when my kids were at school for quite some time until the doctor I had, and I was living in Chicago at the time briefly. He said, they have a new med. Do you want to try it? And I kind of laughed. I said, are you kidding me? Yes, I'll try anything that you recommend that's approved by the FDA. And so, I've been seizure-free 3.5, going on 4 years in the fall.
Wow. Are you able to share what that drug is, what it's called?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. It's called Xcopri. So Xcopri. And it's about 4 or 5 years new. Again, I'll have been on it going on 4. So a lot of neurologists don't know of it. It's kind of one of those things where drug companies need to get the word out, and it's a smaller company too.
Really?
Yeah. So when people ask me, I love to share that too, just in case if you have a doctor and you're struggling, or someone who's not controlled with their epilepsy, definitely ask about it.
So that's the first thing you said to me. Feel free to, Google it, Sarah Carlson seizure, watch the video to see what happened, because it is really eye-opening just of what can happen to a person, because everybody with their seizure can express so differently with everyone.
Yeah.
Have you always been that open about sharing the video, or was that something that evolved over time?
I would say it evolved a little, but maybe at first, because, maybe at first I didn't tell people to go watch it, but I didn't have to. It had gone so viral that my attitude toward it was, more people should read the comments. That was my attitude back then, right away, because that's what people are saying about those of us with epilepsy. I wanted, as an advocate back then, people to know this is an example of the crap we put up with.
So what were some of the comments that people were saying?
I wish I had it in front of me, suggesting that it was demonic, that it was,
oh my gosh.
I'm a villain, or I'm sent from hell and if you play it backwards, it says something.
Oh my gosh.
Or that the government is controlling all of us, and this through the news, having a newscaster say this, that would be, very odd and inappropriate and mean suggestions. Only things people will do in, YouTube comments where you don't know really who they are.
Yeah, I was going to say anonymous comments that
Anonymous
people get
comments.
real brave with typing those
did.
things.
And that was right at the time when I think people could, or were doing more recording on their phones of a TV show, or recording on cable. You could do that and then rewind, and then they were putting it on their phone and then sticking it up on YouTube.
Oh, so describe. So I'm gonna play it for everybody. And would you describe what happens? Like, what is entering your mind? What are we going to be seeing?
I did not feel it coming. People always ask, do you know when you're about to have a seizure? Some people get what they call an aura, or a moment, so they can actually step away or put their hand up. And I never had the luxury of having that. So I'd been anchoring the news successfully without having a seizure on air. And when I did, they were just funny feelings. I never struggled to speak. And all of a sudden, I remember reading the teleprompter and thinking, okay, Sarah, push through this like you always do. You're about to have a seizure. And that's about the time my seizures changed, to the point where during my gibberish, we'll call it, I don't remember that. But you can see me trying. So my brain was going from one kind of seizure to another, literally. I'm going to get through this, but I knew it wasn't working. And you can literally see me put my head down like, dang. And then poor Susan Simon, who was anchoring with me that night, I mean, she looked like a deer in headlights, but God love her, she kept anchoring. And it took me, somebody came and helped me off set. I didn't feel like I had to fall, but I stopped anchoring that night, and soon after, it was all over the web.
Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen says Wisconsin is the latest state, including Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Ohio, and Wyoming, to join Florida's suit. The states claiming The Exorcist saw unto Sracho and Pele Bringritz by health urgent. President Obama will head to...
I should say it's important too that a lot of viewers and people care too. Is Sarah okay? I shouldn't leave that out of my story because I do think a lot of people continue to ask questions and follow me and look for me on social media to make sure I was okay. But my feeling was just despair because I'd been through so much already. I'd been through having them on air, getting the diagnosis, so many other things in life. And yeah, that it maybe wasn't possible anymore. That really hit. That was hard.
Was that what you would call rock bottom?
Honestly, I'll tell you the truth. I don't know that I have told this part of my story too much, but I'm not ashamed of it. It wasn't rock bottom. I ended up leaving news. I think I might have mentioned because the doctor said enough already. Two of the worst parts were I couldn't find a job. And no one could legally or morally say, I looked up your name and you might have this health problem, but no one would hire me in Madison.
Wow.
So that's why I ended up living in the Chicagoland area for a while. At that point, I had a different doctor, again, a lot of changes, and my seizures were worsening, but nobody had taken away my driver's license, and I crashed my car.
Oh.
Luckily, it was just me, and there were no children in my car, outside my car. But yeah, I crashed my car into a neighbor's house. I found out right afterward that their daughter had epilepsy.
Oh, no way.
And that their insurance covered everything. And, they were understanding and kind. But those two things are more rock bottom when you think, okay, so the world out here isn't going to give me a chance now because I have this condition. That stigma is more real than silly comments on YouTube. It was applying for jobs that were as low as I could possibly go financially. And the reason I ended up in the Chicagoland area is because I'm from there. And a friend of a friend who had the money to pay me a little less than what I was making at the moment for a startup company that didn't make it. So I spent about 5 years clamoring for job after job, and nothing really landed. And that's why I was on disability eventually, because it was like jobs were worsening, seizures were worsening. That wasn't good for anybody. So
no. How did you keep your spirits up during that dark time?
Well, it's interesting you ask. Honestly, I met my fiance right after I moved to the Chicagoland area. We're getting married in 10 days.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Oh, by the way. Yeah, so we're getting married in 10 days. We've been together 10 years.
Wow.
So he met me right around the time I was in that startup company, but I met him and I told him everything about my seizures. And again, he too could Google me and learn quite a bit just because of what I did here in Madison. And he stuck with me. He met me when my kids were 6 and 8. That wasn't easy. So he got me through this. My family, my parents are saints, and I'm a runner. And I honestly have to say that for mental therapy has made a big difference for me, big time.
And with epilepsy, you're still able to exercise and run and do all the things.
Yeah, you'd be shocked. When I was going through the harder periods of time, I wanted to distance run. I'm doing less of that now as I've aged, but I was running marathons, and there's a program called Athletes with Disabilities out there, where people volunteer to run with those with disabilities.
Oh, wow.
I would be paired with a runner who could, we did the same pace or whatever. And I made friends with these people and then ran 26.2. I did that about 4 times. Yeah.
That's
you ran several
incredible.
marathons, but I know. So there's so much good in the world. And sometimes when you're stuck with the worst circumstance, you learn about the good, right? And then when you're out there running, you're going, okay, this gives me joy.
So that person was specifically there to just keep an eyeball on you and make sure you were okay while you were doing your thing.
And there's several of them, and we would get an early start everywhere from those who push wheelchairs or the special bikes to me. or blind people who were connected.
Oh,
And
yeah.
my guide had a vest and it said guide on the back in fluorescent. And I did have a couple seizures while running.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Like
So
I said,
were those the kind where you would just pause and sit or stand,
yeah,
or is that the
yeah.
kind?
Just it only happened during one race 3 times in that race. But
Hmm.
luckily it was a guide who I knew from the year before, and we'd stayed in touch, and I told her
Mm.
everything. I said, all I do is stop. And I will get stubborn as I'm coming out. I did. I'll never forget, someone saw me stop and someone bumped into me and I fell down, but I stood back up. And because I was acting funny, they dragged me into a medic tent and she was running after me. I won't go over the swear words I used, but I told the doctor, I'm like, do you have the legal right to stop me? She's here to help me. And they kind of looked at me like, you want to keep running? I'm like, either I'm leaving that now alone or she's coming with me. So yeah. But I got through those. It's kind of fun. Proud of that.
So did you have the awareness that you get stubborn just because others have told you that, or you are aware you're being stubborn but just kind of can't control it?
No control. I only know about it because I've been told. In fact, I only
Really?
know what I just told you I said to the doctor because
Uh-huh.
Monica, the guide I had, told me. Yeah.
Oh
I
my goodness.
I remember feeling strange, but then
Mhm.
I literally left a tent and kept running. It cracks me up.
So she
It's
just filled you in after the fact.
She didn't fill me in until later too, because again, I
Hmm.
had a few more, but we were farther on in the race and she just pulled me off to the side and I don't remember. She said a few people stopped to make sure we were okay, and
Hmm.
that was nice of them to stop. But yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah, yeah,
Well, what an incredible program. And what is the name of that program again, if people want to look that up?
yeah. It's called Athletes with Disabilities. I
Okay.
found it through the Chicago Marathon because I just
Mm.
went and searched online, and I think they offer the program there, but I'm certain they do other races. And I don't know how small of a race they would do, but I know they do
Hmm.
half marathons and marathons, and I'm sure triathlons and things like that. And yeah, I also did run for the Epilepsy Foundation. So raised money for I think it was just the Chicago Foundation. I was on their board for 5 years when I lived there.
Yeah, I also want to talk about that. Now would be probably a good time.
There
So
you
how did
go.
you get involved with the board, and you were president, or you're president of something now, or were you
I'm
president of
I'm
that
the
one?
incoming. Starting,
Incoming.
I get married on June 15th, and then July 1st starts my term as the president or chair and president of the Wisconsin board,
Oh,
which I served
gotcha.
on when I was here, when I was first diagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
which was great for me. Meeting other people with epilepsy,
Mm-hmm.
hearing their stories, not feeling so alone. My journey was quite public, but it was wonderful to have it be so private with a lot of friends that I made that way.
Mm-hmm.
I joke with my friends and family that I think that a lot of my Facebook friends are those that I met that way. And then when I was in Chicago, I was on the board there. And then I've been back 3 years, and I can't remember how many years I've been back on the board, but that doesn't matter. I'm just excited to be in a leadership position finally with them. So, yeah.
So what kind of things do you do on the board?
Our big walk, the Madison Walk, is coming up this Saturday, June 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And we have walks so it's the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin now.
Uh-huh.
There used to be chapters. So one in Milwaukee, one in Wisconsin, Madison, another in
Uh-huh.
Wausau, and so on.
Oh,
But now
gotcha.
we are just one. So
Oh.
we have walks in 4 or 5 cities. If I named them all right now, I know it's Appleton, Eau Claire, Milwaukee, Madison. I believe that's all. We do Epilepsy Awareness Month, which is November. We'll do some fundraising then as well. We had
Mm.
a gala last year, our first time, and it went really well. The important thing we do, and you mentioned it already during our chat, is seizure first aid training. So
Mm.
anytime, and that's free because of our status in the state. We're a nonprofit, and it's what we want to do. So my goal, and I know that my fellow board members and I want to train more because we can do it virtually. We can have a whole school full of teachers. Let's say they find out there are 1 or 2 kids who have epilepsy. We can have I shouldn't say a whole school depending on the size, but
Yeah.
we could do groups. We
Yeah.
could do groups of first aid, excuse
Mm.
me, first responders, teachers, and also just neighbors. If you found out that there's a kid in the neighborhood who has epilepsy, 1 in 26 people will be diagnosed with it in their lifetime. I've been shocked, Carrie, by how many people I start talking to who say, yeah, my uncle has that. And we talk about his or her journey. Yesterday, I was at a golf outing. I wasn't golfing, but networking. And a young woman said, yeah, my best friend has it and they can't find the right medication for her. And she's about 19 or 20 years old. So I shared the name of my medication. I shared information about the foundation, because the foundation also wants to help people and, find the right doctor. Sometimes they feel like they don't have the right doctor, and we can introduce and find the right match. And also support groups. A lot of those are virtual, but I hope we can find more ways to do in person, because that makes a difference too.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a real game changer when you are in a room full of people and hearing their stories, and you can feel comfortable sharing your story, and sharing resources and all the things that get everybody through a difficult time.
Yeah. And it's being at the walk on Saturday and seeing some of the same people we've seen over the years, some of them being children. That's hard to see. I would never want it to be my children. And there are a lot of children with epilepsy. But seeing them smile, and, we'll have a face painter and someone doing balloons out there, and everybody will have a good time and everybody connects. And so that's our goal, is to make sure that people feel comfortable with who they are. And the goal is seizure freedom someday. There needs to be more science behind that too, more research.
And you mentioned your drug is new, and from what I had read online, that was for adults only, right? Kids
Correct.
can't
Right
take
now.
that
Yeah,
right now.
they're testing it right now. We hope in another, I hope in another couple of years that under 18 or under 16 will be able to take it.
Are there medicines like yours for younger people right now, or not so much?
Not from the pharmaceutical company that makes Xcopri. I don't know. I know that pediatric neurology is different, and I would really be ashamed of myself if I tried to be too knowledgeable. The doctors out there are so wonderful. We have such great resources. It's just a matter of finding them and having families know they're out there. Sometimes my fear is that there are families or individuals who give up, and maybe they saw one neurologist, and that person, neurology isn't just for epilepsy. Neurology can be lots of different things. So there are epileptologists. That's not always important, but maybe someone needs that if their epilepsy is really, really uncontrolled, and that's an option too.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about where you grew up now. So you grew up in Chicagoland. You did return there for a spell.
Yes.
What part of Chicagoland did you grow up in?
I grew up in Oak Park, 2 words, Illinois, first suburb west of the city. And yeah, I grew up there, an only child. So I don't know if it shows. when I say my parents are my heroes too, it's not that I didn't want siblings growing up, but they would have had an awful hard time paying attention to anyone else with me as an adult. But I grew up a dancer, not a runner. I love still to dance anytime I can. And I went to UW because I had a cousin here in Madison, and when I visited, fell in love with Madison, Wisconsin. So I came here and became a Badger, and I only left because the TV news journey often takes you somewhere before Madison. These days, I think a lot more first jobs are Madison, but I'm not sure. I was in Alexandria for about 9 months.
Where is that? Is that near Minneapolis at all, or where in
No,
Minnesota is
nowhere near it. In fact, Minnesota is so big that the
Yeah.
Twin Cities couldn't quite cover that state. If you look at the state. So for a long time, I don't think they exist anymore. They had these satellite stations in Alexandria. 2 of the markets, of the networks did. And we would, it was live, but we were only like the second segment of a newscast. And for those watching who don't know what that means, they do their first segment of the most important news of the day and breaking news and so on, sometimes weather. And then this little chunk of local would pop up for those of us in that area. So basically Alexandria is, if you go to Fargo and take a few steps back, it was fun.
Really?
Yeah. And I had to be a photog reporter and anchor and editor. So I would have to strap on this belt that was a battery that was, because I'm so small, it was like twice around.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was, I would drive 4 hours for a story, for a fire.
Mm.
Because sometimes there wasn't any news. I mean, we had to find local news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
So
was
that was your first. So you were a journalism major at UW,
yep,
right?
yep,
And in the broadcast track.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Broadcast journalism and public relations was
Oh,
my
and PR.
minor.
Mm.
Yeah.
Side note, we just dropped an episode with Katie Culver. Now,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
you'll have to listen and say, anyone who's listening to this, also please listen to that. I think anyone who has ever, I say, if you have watched the news, if you are a journalist, if you work in a newsroom, or if you've ever heard of the news, everyone should watch that episode because she was so insightful, as you may recall from being there. She is
Yeah.
incredible. And when I was there, she was my advisor. Was she your advisor?
Oh,
Or was
wow.
she may have been on to
Oh,
other things by that time because you're younger than I am. But she is now the head of the department. And she is phenomenal. I mean,
yeah.
Dan and I just both felt like we had gone to school, back to school, and we're like, we want more, we want
Yeah.
more.
Oh,
But
I'm
anyway,
now.
so
That's what
yeah,
I'll be
so
doing tonight now.
yes. Oh my gosh. I need to listen again just to reabsorb what she told us.
Right. That's
But
so
so
cool.
you went to UW, you went to very far away near Fargo, and
Right.
then where did you go?
And then I was at WXOW. So it's the sister station to WKOW, where I should have
Yeah.
mentioned I interned and I did weekends when Kit Kendi was the weekend anchor.
Oh,
I think she might have been the new
yes.
weekend anchor. Again, this would have been 1997.
Yeah. And because I know, like, I knew I overlapped with you. I mean, I knew you. I was on the opposite schedule of you for a while, but it's like we definitely overlapped somewhere because I felt like I knew you and worked,
Right.
like in the newsroom at the same time as
Right.
you. And so 97 is when we started the mornings, but that's like
Maybe
prior
that's
to
what you remember
starting.
me from.
Yeah,
Might be
maybe.
my intern days because I lingered, I hovered a lot.
So did I. I
Yeah,
was the
right.
intern in 94, 95, and then
Oh,
I
that's so
just
funny.
stayed on. Yeah.
Oh, you were lucky. So I did but I went to WXOW in La
Hmm.
Crosse.
Hmm.
Beautiful. I love La Crosse. And that's actually where I met my first husband.
Oh,
So that's a good thing because I have these
yes.
fantastic children. He and I moved back to Madison and he was a photog. That's how I met him at,
Oh, and he worked at the station.
at News 19 in La Crosse. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we moved back to Madison. He was at NBC 15 originally, and I
Mm,
was at KOW at 27.
mm,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And how old are your children now?
Oh my gosh. My son is about to turn 17. He's a junior, bit of a young
Ooh.
junior, but yeah, great kid. He walked the dog for me today.
Oh, very nice. Good
It's
job.
fine. It's finals week and he didn't have any finals today. And my daughter is also a young for her grade, but she's just finished school her freshman year in college and she's still 18. She turns 19.
Mm.
So yeah, they're 1 year apart, it seems, for a short time because I had them 22 months apart.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
blur.
That was a bit of a blur. Absolutely. But
So,
I'm so proud of her. She's studying performing arts. She wants to be an actress. She
ooh,
did a lot of that at Middleton High School.
oh,
And her
really?
dad, for a living, does a lot of videography and editing. So for
Mm.
fun, they did different kinds of film festivals where she would act. So she's had a lot of experience in a way. And you
Yeah.
can see that talent. It's just,
Ooh.
I'm not the only one who says it because I'm her mom. So it'll
Yes.
be so much fun to watch it grow. Yeah.
Well, I'll have to
Yeah.
watch now. That's
Yeah. And
fantastic.
Savannah, Georgia. Oh, gorgeous
Mm.
place. I never thought she'd go so far,
Yeah.
but she's also such an independent woman. And she
Mm-hmm.
was an independent little girl. I mean,
Hmm.
I joke that she came out going like, I got this, mom. And it's true.
Relax, Mom.
She really, yeah, and she really does. So I was never worried. I was never sad. I don't mean to sound rude, but she
Hmm.
needed that super independence. And she's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you don't have like relatives in the area, in the Georgia area. That's just a school that she targeted and wanted to go to.
Right. She found out that it was known for performing arts and acting, and it's an art school, and
Hmm.
it was just her thing. Applied, got in, fell in love, and was like, "This is where I'm going." And
Wow.
it took a lot for her dad and I to get together and say, apply to a few more.
Yeah.
Just see what you think. And she did it unwillingly.
Yeah.
She did
Yeah.
it, and she was still in love with SCAD, as they call it.
Mm.
It's a fantastic school, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, what is your son into?
Well, he's an entrepreneurial kid. So I
Mm.
mean, when he was in middle school, he was selling sneakers. That's kind of a gig, a thing on
Oh,
social
like
media.
the real expensive sneakers, you
Yeah.
buy them and then you resell them.
And we went to like another parent and I took the little boys to the shoe convention in Chicago where
No
they could,
way.
oh yeah, where they would yeah. And he's doing little things like that still. He and his buddies bought a power washer and they want to do that to make money this summer,
Mm,
preferring that
smart.
over working at the grocery store or
Yeah.
a restaurant. But
That's
there,
great
there will probably,
experience.
it is, but there will be more. We'll probably try to get a second job there.
Yeah.
But we're proud of him too. He gets great grades and he's a great football player at Middleton High School. And
Mm.
I'm blinking. I'm sure you know what it's like. And my kids are going to be grown. How old are yours?
So I've got one who just finished his freshman year in college, and he's a
Okay.
lacrosse player
Oh,
and
cool.
in college, which is really fun. And then my daughter, not only has she already graduated, but she's married.
Oh, wow.
I know. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So my
Yeah.
daughter and son-in-law just moved back to Pittsburgh because my son-in-law is going to go to PT school at Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh. So
Gotcha.
they are doing city life for the first time, and it's so cool. They
Yeah.
live right down on the river and all the action where all the big sports stadiums are. And so we're living vicariously through them. We're
Right?
like, oh, there's a Pirates game. We'll all go. And we just like all walk there together. And
Yeah. I
it's going
always
to be
wanted to live in
fun.
a big city. I know I came from, I say Chicagoland because I didn't live in Chicago.
Right.
Madison was about the biggest city I lived in. So
Mm-hmm.
the downtown thing when I was a student. So Pittsburgh's
Yes.
cool. That's a really neat
It
city.
is cool. It's a nice size. It's kind of reminds me of Milwaukee-ish size that it's
Yeah.
manageable to get around. And I mean, I am not a city driver, but I can drive downtown Pittsburgh without arriving crying, which is how I arrived in Chicago when I visited my then boyfriend, now husband of 27 years. I find, and that was pre-cell phone. And he's like, come meet me here. And it was like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I
Yeah.
arrived, I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And I was
Don't get off at the wrong
crying. I'm like,
exit.
I know. Oh, I had already driven through lots of interesting areas. And I was like, not a city driver. I confirmed that day. But Pittsburgh I can do for some
Yeah.
reason.
I got to tell you, coming from the Chicagoland area, and I had jobs downtown. When I was younger, I was like, I don't know why. Somehow I was just invincible, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I grew up learning how to drive that way.
Yeah.
But in recent years, I also didn't drive for 5 years because of my condition. Hello.
Yes.
But in
Yes.
recent years, when I've tried to go back, I'm like, oh, okay, not doing that again. Put me on a train or a bus.
Yes.
That's it.
I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you. Well, if Dan was here, he would say
Yeah.
the following. Dan would say, first of all, what was your very first job ever? We'll just do one question at a time. Very first job ever.
Well, babysitting, but I won't count that because that's boring.
Okay.
But first job ever that I liked was working for the Green Onion restaurant in Oak Park
Ooh.
with my then boyfriend. But I went from being a hostess to a waitress, and I loved waitressing. Loved it.
Mm.
Yeah. I always was like a nanny babysitter too in
Mhm,
high school and
mhm.
college, but I loved waiting tables and
What
getting
did you
tips
like
and
about it?
talking to people. Shocker. Like getting to know people
Mhm,
and reading them, right? There were people who didn't want to chat with the waitress,
mhm,
and there were people who were really chatty, and that's
mhm.
kind of how you made your living. I loved it.
Hmm.
I used it for a lot of my money during college.
I bet it's a
Mhm.
wonderful way
Yeah,
to make a lot of money. You're
it
in the
is.
right spot and you have
Exactly.
the right personality, like you.
I figured it out then. It's actually funny when I went to UW, I often tell people I didn't go there to become a journalism major. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Both of my
Mm,
parents were in sales growing up.
mhm,
So I went there thinking I'd go into the business school. And at UW-Madison, I don't know how it is now, but you had to apply to the business school during freshman year. So I got there and found out that meant I had to take math classes. So I quickly said, well, maybe I'll get a Bachelor of the Arts in what I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget. And I should probably find out who the counselor was. And I probably could. Whoever my counselor was, generally, this was not in journalism, called a meeting because I hadn't declared a major and I was supposed to. This is back when, again, there were no ways to text a student and say, hello, you need to do this. And I don't think I was getting an email to tell me something, but they sat me down and they were like, okay, we got to figure out what you're doing here. And I'm like, okay, somehow very whatever about it. And they said, what classes do you like? And I said, well, I've always liked my English classes. I like to write. I like to read. And this was a get to know you session as well. And then they said, well, what's your favorite class right now? And I said, honestly, public speaking, because I said, I really like it. And everyone else seems to hate it. But I thought, the teacher would say, who wants to go first? I'd be like, oh, I'll go first. And the woman said, have you ever considered broadcast journalism, like TV news? And I went, oh, I love the news. I kid you not. Growing up, I loved watching TV news. My parents did everything with me.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened.
But you would never put two and two together until they literally sat you down and said, now or never.
And thank goodness they said, what's your favorite class? What do you like to do? I may have just fallen on the, I don't know, English major. No offense to those who, majored in English, but it wouldn't have really been meaningful to me. So it's kind of cool.
I got into it in a very similar way, just because those were all of my favorite classes too. I loved the, the reading, the writing, the public speaking. I liked all those things, and I kind of came to it the same way.
That's interesting.
But before I went to school, but still similar.
Right. Someone probably told me that before, but
so your first was the waitress. What was the worst job you ever had?
So when I had to leave news because of epilepsy, I took a job at a startup, which was not terrible. It just wasn't going to live forever. It was about 1.5 years until he gave me good notice that things were going to go awry. And then I probably had about 5 jobs for the next 5 years because I was trying to figure out what to do, what to grab. I worked for a company where they were going under. So I thought, oh, I got a job there. No, I wasn't told they were going under.
Oh boy.
But they had me doing sales, basically cold call. Here's a list of phone numbers. Here's what you say. To me, that wasn't that hard. It was just gruelingly boring.
Yeah.
And the people were unfriendly and unhappy, sadly. And the job wasn't long. And so everybody got fired, and that was such a depressing thing to see. I was already in a, like that, as I mentioned, this downward, not spiral, but, hill.
Trajectory.
Yeah. My seizures worsening, my job's worsening. So it was just another one, but it was really sad to see that environment, to be in it every day with no windows. Anyway.
Now, we haven't talked too much about your new job, because the next question Dan would have asked in his trio of questions is there something you're thirsting for? So let's quick touch on your current job and then talk about if there's anything else you're thirsting for job-wise.
That's a great question. So Sketchworks Architecture is a commercial architecture firm in Middleton. And a lot of people say, well, how did you land that? Like architecture. I decided to start working again and ran into a friend who said, my really good friend who runs this firm has been looking to hire someone to do business development, and you would be perfect. And I went, well, but I don't know anything about architecture. He said, that's actually a good thing. Outside eyes, if you're good at networking and you're wanting to learn it, this is what I think he'd like. So Steve Schulfer, the owner of Sketchworks Architecture, the principal owner, he has 2 other partners that we work with, but we hit it off, had coffee, and it was a month later I was there. So I was the 12th employee to be hired by Sketchworks. We have 21 now. So it's a growing firm, a lot of designers, project managers, interior design, fun stuff. I wish I knew how to draw and how to write proposals. And I'm learning a lot about the business end of it. What I thirst for is, again, learning how to do more of the business end of it, because coming from journalism, you aren't given a lot of, oh, here, flip out a PowerPoint presentation on such, or learn how to use this kind of software. As a 40-something-year-old woman, you really kind of, yeah, I've had to learn a lot. So I would love to grow more there. The concept of business development is sales. And I think we were, in an odd way, it doesn't sound appropriate, but you know what I mean, selling ourselves as newscasters, selling the station, selling our personalities, selling why you want to tune in every morning or afternoon to see what we have to say about what's happening. But it's the same thing in sales. We want the attention of the next commercial realtor who's going to hire us and introduce the client. So yeah, I guess I'm just excited still. I'm about, a year and 9 months new to this company. There's a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What skills, we've been talking a lot, with a lot of people who worked at WKOW, but then, some continued in news, and a lot of them, though, went other directions. And a common theme that has emerged was how much their journalism skills and their TV news skills do translate in these other things, even though they may not know about the topic they're getting into, like education spokesperson or, whatever the case may be. What skills have you learned? You said, selling yourself. What other, not selling yourself, but marketing yourself.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic now.
It could be. That's a great question. I think one of the things you remember, we all did in TV news is, and journalism, is being live, being on the spot, having to think on your feet. Someone asks a question, you need to be able to answer it. So in the business world, it's the same thing. So even though I might not know everything I need to know in a moment, I know how to quickly answer and not sound like an idiot, I hope. Although you may hear otherwise after I say this on the podcast. Also, I think the networking element, a lot of it is an interview. So it's a heck of a lot easier to have coffee or lunch with someone, a prospect, let's say, or go to a big networking event with a room full of people you don't know and walk up to a stranger. That's pretty easy. That's easier than interviewing the governor live on TV. Me, that's that's how I try to compare it, how I used it. I remember those moments where I was actually nervous because it was election night and things were moving fast. I don't have that kind of pressure. It's different, but it's easy to apply those skills. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. My question I like to ask is if there were bloopers, seizure does not count as bloopers. If there were bloopers in your TV days that you still kind of maybe chuckle at or go, oh, cringe a little bit.
Yes, I'm trying to think. It was in lacrosse where I created what we call a graphic. So I was the reporter live, and it was carbon monoxide poisoning. Somebody had passed away. It was terrible, but it was breaking news. And I, on the fly, got carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide in my brain mixed up.
Oh boy.
And I kept saying carbon dioxide. And I created the graphic wrong too. It said CO2. So but again, and even right now I'm going, do I have that right?
Yeah.
All I know is that I'll never forget my news director being like, Sarah. The live shot was over, and I was new enough that I was still a little nervous when it was breaking. I didn't have a lot of time to prep my script or think about what was happening. And I'm guessing viewers probably called in and went, what did she just say? Yeah. And I shouldn't laugh. Someone had died, but yeah, that was one.
Yeah.
That's one I'll never forget. That was painful.
Well, yep. We learned from those, right?
Oh gosh. Yeah. What was yours? What's your blooper?
Oh, my big blooper was, the whole, Paul Bunyan's axe, the rivalry with Minnesota and the Badgers. And I said, Paul Bunyan's ass.
Oh.
Right there in the morning, right there on TV. And it came out and it was like, I just froze for a moment because I just wanted to rewind and take the words back. And it's like, I heard it come out. And then I said, I don't even know what I did. I think I corrected myself, but We got
I mean,
funny
X.
emails.
I mean,
Yeah,
X.
I know. Well, then Dan and I were like, trying not to laugh,
Yeah.
but it's so hard. But we had a little giggle, and then somehow we kind of reined it in and finished, and then we laughed a lot after the newscast. But we
Right.
got funny emails. I mean, people were really they were complimentary. They said that made my day. That was really funny, but you guys handled it really professionally, and so thanks for that. So we were like, whoo. I mean, he had nothing to do with
Nobody
it.
was
I was the one who
complaining.
said it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's too
Yeah, we
funny.
didn't get complaints, but people were understanding and we were grateful.
Yeah. Bloopers are fun.
They are.
It wouldn't be fun if we didn't have them.
I know. I know. I mean, here it is 20 some years later, and Dan and I still laugh about that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And you and Dan are still in touch. Obviously you are now, but you've remained
Yes.
friends over the years.
Yes, we have. I mean, we hadn't seen each other much, but it's like one of those things when when you work so closely with someone. I mean, maybe a long stretch will go by and then we'll be like, "Oh, Dan, have you watched this TV show? You would love it. And have you, read this book? You'd get a big kick out of it." And, that kind of thing. And then
Right.
I started putting the bug in his ear. We need a podcast. Let's do
I
this.
love
So
it. I
I
love
finally
it.
twisted his arm hard enough that he said yes.
Cool. I'm so happy for you. This is awesome.
Thank you. We're having a good time.
I
Well, is
bet.
there anything else you want to add? I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but are there
No,
any things that you still want to share?
you know what? I've said everything. Now this will be my blooper. Uh, no, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to all the people who keep in touch, our journalism community, and those who are the viewers out there who seem to care about how we're all doing. I think that's fantastic. That's why this is such a cool idea. And it's not obviously just people on TV, those behind the scenes and such. But we had a good old time, and we're not old.
No way.
But news is something that I have that bug. I'll always love it. So this is such a fun thing to reminisce about.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.